welcome to this episode of The Gateway, your portal to the unexplained, mystical, and the otherworldly. I'm your host, C.L. Thomas, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM New Orleans. What is with the paranormal lately? It seems like the demons are everywhere, everyone is getting possessed. Do you think it's just a Hollywood trend? Is it real? Tonight I have Archbishop and demonologist Kenneth Torres to discuss the darker side of the paranormal. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hey, CL, thank you for having me back on. It's always a pleasure being on your show and talking to you behind stage. First things first, I do want to make clarity. I'm not a demonologist, so to speak. I don't really like that term. I don't necessarily care about the history of demons, where they originated from, their characteristics, and their traits. That doesn't entertain me. What I try to focus on as an exorcist and a person who does pastoral counseling is the liberation of the individual. The only thing I care about is the time of your arrival and the time of your departure. Everything else is just a distraction. Now, granted, there are some other people out there that are reputable and knowledgeable that have been around for a while, and that's their thing. But I feel like the word demonologist is tossed around a lot. And for me, this is a serious vocation. It's a serious vocation. We deal with a lot of people that are afflicted, that are dealing with mental illness and trauma. So demonologist is not part of my repertoire. So, and
Gotcha.
just for clarity.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. You're fine. It's natural. You know, those words are intertwined a lot.
They are. I mean, every time someone says that they are an expert in this field, they automatically start calling themselves a demonologist or an exorcist. What is the difference between all of these terms that we toss around like this?
Well, first of all, an expert in what? I mean, there are variations of demonology from across the world. There are over 1,000 religions. So what are you an expert in? Is it Catholic demonology? Is it Judaic demonology? Is it Christian demonology? Is it Islamic demonology? Is it Astrosaurian demonology? Is it Hindu demonology? So the list goes on and on. So what type of demonology do you specialize in? I will assume that most people, when they say that, they mean Christian demonology. And even then, that's a vast term. Demonology is traditionally a theological course that is taught in seminary school. And now there is a influx of people learning demonology courses at some other schools online. And you know what? Knowledge is power, and I'll keep my opinions to myself. I don't want to stop anyone from learning.
Right.
But traditionally, demonology is a theological course that is taught in seminary school.
So you just said that demons do exist. That was one of the questions I had on my list for you, actually, is that demonology or demons tend to be culturally known in Christianity, especially in the paranormal world.
Yes.
But it does exist. You're right. It's in Judaism. It's in a lot of different cultures.
It is. I mean, we look at history, even in Africa and in the Middle East, there is some sort of belief of a darker energy, a demonic entity. And that varies across religions and cultures from around the world. Now, the interpretation is, for us, in the Christian belief, a demon is a demonic entity that's evil, that's here to harm you and cause you pain and torment. As opposed to other customs and cultures, they believe in it as a neutral deity. And they also believe that they can summon these demons and have them possess them to help them with their crops, to leave them alone. You see a lot of traditional practices in Africa. There are rituals where individuals, the tribes, will dance for certain seasons, and they will, through dance and through chanting and ritual and music, they will have that entity or the demon come inside of them, possess them, offer themselves momentarily, so that way they can prosper and have a wondrous season of harvest, whether it be for corn, whether it be for rice. And so it all depends. Generally speaking, there are people who have also beliefs that demons are their friends and that they can make contracts with them. And while granted, this can happen, there normally is a price to pay at the end.
And that price, I assume, is pretty heavy.
The price can be pretty heavy. It's been my experience that the price is your soul, your life, or a family member. So I just tell people that whatever you believe in, just be cautious. I mean, you're dealing with unseen and unknown forces that have never walked the earth. And if you think that your human body, that your human comprehension is smart enough to outsmart a demon, then you've probably got another thing coming. I implore you to go back to school and learn. It's a dangerous path walking down it. And I don't mean to insult anybody's other belief systems, but in my experience, these things are not good. And you can't convince me otherwise.
People who, I guess there's so many different questions I want to ask you. People, what exactly is a demon? Because what I've always been told that a demon is actually a fallen angel that's been
Correct.
kicked out of heaven. But you have people who don't even believe in angels, but they believe in demons.
Right. So traditionally speaking, a demon is what we call a fallen angel. During the beginning of time, Lucifer was the first fallen angel. He was the angel of light, and he was the most precious angel. He commanded one of the choirs of heaven, and he rebelled against God. And because of that, in the instant of an eye, he fell to earth, and he took half of the choir with him. So a demon, yes, traditionally speaking, in the Christian belief, it is a fallen angel. Now, I think it might be different, like in Islam, it might be some neutral deity. I'm not too well versed with Islam, but there are different interpretations of what a demon is. But Abrahamic belief systems, generally speaking, the thought process is that the demon is a fallen angel.
So yes, in the Chinese culture, they're called yins.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if elementals would be considered demonic-like beings.
No, I don't know too much about elementals. I hear about elementals, and that word, I hear it very much,
Especially lately.
especially lately. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what to make of it yet, because I haven't had an encounter with a supposed elemental. So it's hard for me to give an opinion on what I think it is.
Right.
Now, I certainly don't think that all spirits are bad. The church teaches, and a lot of traditions within the church teach that demons and spirits are bad in nature and that they're all evil. I don't necessarily believe that, but I do caution people. For me, I see human spirits more like in a purgatory type of state who need help crossing over. And that's just my opinion based on my faith. But I don't think that they are all evil. And yeah.
So these other humans, would those be considered your negative attachments?
Well, they could be. So with the human spirits, we have free will. And so when we die, we have the same personality and the same characteristics when we die. I've had cases where individuals report the same sort of supernatural activity happening at home in relations to when that family member was alive, same isms, same mannerisms. So if you're a jerk in life, you're a jerk in death. If you're a lovely person in life, you're going to be a lovely person in death. And mostly speaking, I do think that, with that being said, that's where we come in and we have to be able to discern what good and bad is and what a demonic entity is. It's highly rare to come across the demon, so to speak. And even demonic possession, it's rare. It's like 1%, 0.1%. You're more than likely not going to come across a demon, but there are a lot of investigators and paranormal teams that would say otherwise.
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Before we do that, though, I've had you on my other show, Small Town Tales podcast, and during that interview, you talked about your childhood and how you got into this. Do you want to
Yes.
share that story?
Yeah. So I was born and raised back east in New York and New Jersey. And my family were of Puerto Rican descent. And so there's a lot of mysticism around our culture. My grandmother, from my mother's side, was a high practitioner in Santeria. And she wasn't a good practitioner. She did a lot of evil things. And I would witness stuff. There was a lot of things that I encountered that I couldn't explain. But I would say the catalyst for me was growing up. In New Jersey. My parents and I, my dad and my little sister, my stepmom, we moved to this place in Patterson, New Jersey. This place was creepy to begin with. It started off with my little sister seeing a girl coming out from under the bed in a purple dress, teaching her how to curse and do bad things, telling her to kill the family, to use a knife. From my father going up and down the stairs and just getting tossed around like a rag doll, or just a bike coming down from the second floor, unhinging itself, rolling around 20 feet around the corner, and just launching itself down the stairs, to the point as well where my dad and my sister and I were watching a movie one day, and we saw my little sister walk across the kitchen, and we're like, "No, sis, come back here." And we're like, she's like, "I'm here." She was sitting down in front of us the whole time. There was this entity that walked across the kitchen that looked exactly like her. And so when my dad went to go see, there was a loud thump, like a loud crash. That's when he discovered that there was a crucifix inverted inside a candle shattered. So the cross was inverted upside down. There was a lot of noise, a lot of sulfuric smells. It was just really bad, even to the point where, and I don't want to get into this, or because it involved animal abuse. We lost one of our pets due to this activity, and we lost him, and we found him a few weeks later, not in good condition. He was literally mocked. He was being mocked. We found him outside, crucified and gutted open with his insides hanging out.
Wow.
So yeah, and it was really bad. A lot of things happened. My father got attacked. He had a heart attack. My little sister was getting scratches. We were getting pushed. There was a lot of things that were just not good. And it just wasn't a simple haunting. The gas line being open, the fire just on the stove just being opened, the food in the fridge going putrid after going grocery shopping one day, and then all of a sudden it's green and moldy. It wasn't good. So that affected me, and that's when I had my really first experience with the supernatural. And I know it was darker in nature because even the preacher, we had a small church across the street, and it was a little, I guess like a little chapel. And the priest was like, "Are you guys okay there?" And my dad was like, "Yeah, I remember this. I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. I remember this." He says, "Are you guys okay there?" I go, my dad goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You guys are the fourth family to have been there in less than a year."
So this was connected to the land.
So this could have been connected to the land, but ultimately at the end, what we found out was that the neighbors that used to live below us, because it was empty, the apartment below us was empty. It was just a two-story building, apartment upstairs, 1 and 2 separated. My dad alleges that the owner of the property had evicted the prior tenants because they were performing true satanic rituals. Not Church of Satan, but true satanic rituals, summoning things, Ouija boards, sacrificing animals, and there was blood everywhere, and it just was grotesque. And so we think that the activity that was happening downstairs was affecting us as well. And towards the end, my father, when we moved out of that place, he found a little crawl space, and within that crawl space, he opened up a box, and it was pictures of naked children and dirty used underwear. My dad turned that into the police, and it turns out that the people that lived there before us, or one of them, they were under investigation for that sort of activity. And so we think that the abuse that might have been happening in that home, along with the satanic rituals and the summoning, may have opened something to that property. But we cleansed it. We had the church come out, and we prayed, and they did an exorcism. Well, you can't really exorcise a building. It's just a general term, but they did a blessing and a prayer. And it seemed like it cleared out, but we didn't stay long enough to want to find out. I think about a month later, we all moved out. Hey, Foxy Joe, how are you? And that was my first paranormal encounter. It's pretty heavy stuff.
Hi, Foxy Joe. So it seems like demonic activity, you hear this again and again. The activity in the home always seems to follow the same sort of timeline.
Patterns.
Yeah, patterns. The crosses will get flipped over.
Yeah.
You always smell sulfur. There's always things in threes. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about why these
Well,
are like
because we talk about in Latin la nonia hora, the ninth hour, which roughly translates to 3 p.m. That's when Jesus died or was on the cross. He was crucified. And so 3 a.m. normally, and the three knocks is a mocking of the Holy Trinity. And so, but throughout time, as human beings, we've given these things an identity. So they know how to gain our attention. So they say, well, we know that human beings, we can torment them by doing these three knocks because that's how it's just been characterized throughout time and throughout century. It's associated with that time, with that type of behavior. So these demons do things in a pattern. Uh, they all have a specific job, but their job is also to torment you and to cause discontent. And so they seem to follow that pattern because they know it gets our attention.
are you
But
familiar?
generally speaking, it is a mocking of the Holy Trinity.
Got it. So from there you went on to um you went on to be an archbishop,
Yeah.
and you're into paranormal, and your heart is set to try and help others who believe that they are being afflicted through demonic activity. So you really have a heart for helping people now. What are some of the personal cases of demonic activity that you have come across since?
Well, currently have a few open that I'm not really allowed to discuss, but there was one I did a few years ago with Chris McKinnell with the Warren Legacy Foundation. We were assisting an individual who came under demonic possession. And the reason why we know this is because we received the reports that the Vatican had sent out some priests out there to do a blessing. The psychological evaluations were done, the physical evaluations were done, and everything came back clear and conclusive that there were no signs of mental illness or any physical ailments. But allegedly, the two priests went to the home to meet with the family to speak to this individual. And upon arrival, the individual started levitating, crawling up the wall, speaking different languages, and it frightened these priests so much that they never came back. And for months, this individual was afflicted. A lot of it had to do with the type of work that they were doing. They were doing dark occult tattoos. And when I say occult, I mean like really, really dark symbolism, literally sigils to summon entities.
You said
For
this was a tattoo artist?
a tattoo artist, yes.
Okay.
So this tattoo artist was specifically hired for a certain group of individuals who were into darker things, desecrating graves, having sex on them, doing blood sacrifices on humans and animals. So she was into some pretty heavy stuff, and unfortunately came under possession. We were able to liberate her. We had a team on hand. This was in France. We were assisting virtually because at that time it was the pandemic. There was no way to get over. So we had a team on the ground helping us do the ritual. And during this, this individual didn't know any sort of English or Spanish. But as soon as I started talking in Spanish, this individual responded back to me in my own language. They then proceeded 5'5", actually like 5'1", 120 pounds, took their brother and tossed him across the room. 230 pounds, Scandinavian Viking, muscled, solid. Tossed him across the room 20 feet and broke his arm. So we were like, okay, this is heavy, this is real, but we maintained our faith and we just kept on fighting the good fight. And we were there for several hours. We were able to liberate them for the time being, but we told this individual that you have to kind of change your ways. You have to focus your life on newer and positive things. And it's
Right.
hard when you've been doing that type of work for so long and you're making a living off of it and the money is good. It's really hard to turn away from those ways. And unfortunately, they came under possession again, and we lost contact with them and the family. I just pray that this individual is saved in the sense where they were able to get liberated. And so that's one of the cases that still weighs heavily on my mind. A person out there under some sort of demonic influence, going back to their old ways.
So do people always have to invite a demonic oppression?
Well, it's not necessarily. Sometimes the invitation is not intentional. Most of the cases that we've come across are unintentional invitations. And like I said, possession is rare. If anything, you'll probably face some sort of infestation or some sort of activity in the house that can lead into the possession. But the majority of it is just them bothering you and trying to scare you. And many of the times, the invitation is unintentional, which is why I try to tell people, just be careful with what you do. I know a lot of people are into the paranormal. They like using Ouija boards, they like conducting spirit communication. Those things in itself are dangerous. No matter whether it's a Ouija board, whether it is a pendant, whether it is spirit communication, you're still trying to communicate with something that you don't know what it is. And there are people out there who are intuitive and have these abilities and gifts that may have experience and can help you circumnavigate that. But at the same time, too, if this individual is gifted or intuitive and they don't believe in the darker things, then they may not have the proper discernment to figure out exactly what it is. When you don't believe in the darker things, but you believe in angels, I believe that you might be able to get fooled, because these energies, these demonic beings, can disguise themselves as children, as friendly individuals. So you just got to be careful. You just have to be careful.
What are the biggest common misconceptions that people have about demonic activity? I know you touched on this already a little bit, but what are some of the most common misconceptions that we have out there?
Demons do not live in haunted houses. That is our biggest one. Demons do not live in haunted houses. They have other things to do. So they are not going to be living in haunted houses. So demons don't live in haunted houses. However, they are around, they are present. So it is that mere communication with spirit that can attract them, especially if you are mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally weak. They can pick up on that. It's like sharks and chum, right? They can taste the blood, they can smell the blood. So it's that mere communication with other spirits during a paranormal investigation that can attract them. And then they can go to the location, and then you can bring home an attachment, or they can influence you, or they can affect you in a way where you get sick. So that is a common misconception, is that they live in haunted houses. Another common misconception is demons cannot read your mind. They cannot. They don't have that ability. They don't have that authority spiritually, so they cannot read your minds. A lot of people will say otherwise. Oh, they can read your mind. No, they can pick up on certain essence because they're well in tune with how you live your life. They
Mm-hmm.
understand that there's trauma and that there's anxiety and that there's everyday stresses, and they observe and they can watch these things. And so they can send signals to your brain to make you have a certain dream. They can influence you in that way, but they cannot read your mind. That's a fallacy.
That's interesting because, again, you do hear a lot of people who are oppressed, and we'll get into the difference between oppression and
Yeah,
possession.
yeah,
But they seem to play on your vices. So how would they know that a person has an addiction or suicidal ideologies or whatever it may be?
yeah. Because they're smart. They can pick up on certain faculties, right? They can pick up on whether or not you're a person that lives a positive life, that exercises, that eats right, that doesn't smoke, that doesn't drink. They can pick up if you're a family individual that's always happy and able to serve other people. But they can also pick up on your emotions and feelings by watching. They see you do drugs, they see you do alcohol. They hear things by talking to other people about your feelings and emotions, trauma and abuse. They can also pick up on these things. So they're conniving, and they can pick up on these things. They're very intuitive in that sense.
How do you approach investigating claims of demonic hauntings? I know
First
we
of all,
talked about this before
yeah,
too.
no, and that's a good question. First of all, I asked, how many Conjuring and Exorcist movies did you just watch? How many paranormal shows did you just get done watching on one of the major networks? What YouTuber did you just get done watching? That's my first question. Okay.
That's interesting.
It's true. I mean, because psychosomatics is one of those things where you watch TV, you hear things, you see things on TV, and then all of a sudden you're alone at home and you're like, oh my gosh, I just saw a shadow figure, or oh my gosh, I heard something. So the psychosomatics can affect you physically and mentally, even to the point where it makes you sick. And even that by itself, where there's originally nothing there, you just going into that mindset can now leave you open to the possibility of being afflicted and attacked by these negative energies. But we also have to approach these with caution, which is why we require my religious order, the Solomonic Order of St. Michael the Archangel, we require that all of our clients who have these allegations, who claim that there's demonic possession, we require that they do and conduct an extensive mental, physical, psychological evaluation. And not only that, though, we talk to them, we get to know them, we learn about their family history, the things that they like to do, their hobbies, what their job is like, what their financial situation is like, what their marriage is like, what their friendship is like. Do they have a past use of drugs and alcohol? So we look for all of those things to determine whether or not, and then we're also looking for any supernatural evidence. Mostly people who say that they are possessed are not possessed. You'll have other family members that come to us for help and say, we are noticing these things. But in my experience, people who say that they are possessed are not possessed. Now, they might be oppressed in a sense, or they might be suffering from some sort of infestation in their home. But at the end of the day, we still need concrete evidence and proof of that before we even try to conduct an exorcism. And even before that, there's a pastoral counseling phase and a chaplaincy phase where we counsel people, we send them to the proper resources, mental health, physical, taking their proper medication. So it's a process. It takes time.
Was it a lot of counseling as well?
Yeah, a lot of the work that I do is mostly counseling. A lot of the work that we do is counseling, because if we can avoid this exorcism part, that's great. If we can help empower you and help you understand that you are in control, but you have to change certain things and that maybe you're hurt and that you need to address these wounds, then you won't be a victim of these entities.
What is the difference? What's the easiest way for people to understand out there the difference between oppression and possession?
So oppression is the stage of oppression involves the gradual spiritual and psychological effects on the individual. And so this person may experience feelings of fear, anxiety, depression, physical or emotional pain, insomnia, and other disturbances. And they often feel a presence or an influence surrounding them. As well, though, what does that sound like too? That sounds like a diagnosable mental illness. That sounds like it could be schizophrenia. So mental illness and demonic possession do go hand in hand. One doesn't negate the other. We just have to be really careful. And that's why we are looking for the supernatural evidence. Do you have an aversion to religious objects? A holy cross, holy medal, Saint Benedict? Are you displaying supernatural strength, supernatural feats? Do you have knowledge of things that you shouldn't know about individuals? Are you always in a trance-like state of mind? So we look for things like that while we make our assessment. And then the possession part is, at this stage, the demonic entity, it gains control over the individual's body, mind, and actions, often resulting in a radical personality change and the loss of self-control. And so this person will show aggressiveness, speak in different voices, as I mentioned, possess superhuman strength, or demonstrate knowledge beyond their capabilities, amongst other things: levitating, walking up walls, contorting, eyes turning completely white, distorted voices, multiple voices coming out at the same time.
Got it. So I want to turn the conversation to what's going on in paranormal right now. This is where it kind of gets a little bit interesting for the paranormal listeners out there, I guess.
Yeah.
Right now on the TV shows, it's almost like a circus, I think. I don't know. Every single investigation has the investigators are getting possessed. The mediums seem to be possessed in every episode now. I just watched one recently where the guy believed that negative entities was going to attack him, and he starts yelling out some kind of like spell or something. It was just ridiculous to watch it. Another guy was like at a haunted location, and he started yelling that he was being possessed by one of the spirits in there, one of the negative spirits. It's just over and over again on television. Is this just Hollywood trying to sell TV? Or do you think there's any kind of truth to this?
Well, I mean, I do think that there's a possibility that this can happen. I do think that when you are going out there and you're doing these investigations, you are exposing yourself to something that you don't know. Especially if you are intuitive or psychic medium and you have these abilities, and maybe you're still figuring out this gift. You don't know what's coming through. So there's a possibility that you can be influenced, probably not possessed, but you can be influenced. I think people often confuse like influenced. Influence is more of an external sort of thing, external voices, physical attacks, and they play games with your minds. And secondly, too, it could be fake, just for viewership. There's a lot of shows out there that there's an enamoration. They're enamored with demonic possession, and they love the idea of demons. But what they don't know is that a true encounter with a real evil demonic entity is earth-shattering. It changes your life. It changes your family's life. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't think, you can't focus. You're constantly being tormented. You're hearing voices. You're physically getting assaulted and physically getting attacked to the point where you have no control over it. And then it's just breaking you down, just beating you down over and over and over until you completely surrender yourself, the vexation part, the possession part, because that's what vexation is. It's internal attacks. And so, and the obsession too, there's an obsession part. People are obsessed. People become preoccupied or obsessed and sometimes become harmful and destructive. They have these thoughts and actions or desires to want to hurt themselves. So we just have to be really, really careful, because we don't know if that's mental illness or a true entity. But nonetheless, it's still dangerous. Don't play this game. Why take a risk? Just for views and likes, just so you can get monetized? I think that's one of the problems that I have. And I'm not mentioning any shows because, and unethically for me. But there are a lot of shows out there that, are good entertainment value, and you can watch it for what it is. And there are other shows out there that sometimes, especially with some of these YouTubers, I think and TikTokers, they cross boundaries and they do things that they shouldn't, often opening themselves for this sort of activity. And it's not right.
It's kind of a shame, because I think they kind of lose sight of what the point of all of this really is. And it's about it's about healing, really. It's about spiritual and mental healing on so many different levels, the whole paranormal realm.
That is true, because we are looking for some sort of answer.
Right, exactly. If you look at the paranormal, it's a lot of, I'm not trying to blanket it by any means, but a lot of broken people are drawn to the paranormal, and there's a reason for that. They're looking for answers. They've lost someone, they've gotten hurt somewhere, and they're looking for answers. It's very similar to spiritualism, religion, any of those kind of things.
And it's a coping mechanism. I have a really good friend and psychologist, Dr. Melanie Cabrera, and we often talk. And this is a coping mechanism. And we can't tell them that it's wrong. Otherwise, this is how people are coping and dealing with trauma. Her and we had a conversation a while ago, and I don't know if she's working on this project, but she was telling me that many people who are in this paranormal field have suffered some sort of trauma. They've gone through something.
It's true.
And there's a small percentage of people that are just doing it for fun. And hey, if that's what you want, that's fine. I'm not here to judge you. Just be careful with what you're doing.
Right. On the flip side of it too, I hear a lot of people who don't want anything to do with the paranormal. I know a couple of mediums actually who are very good, but they won't do anything in the paranormal, and it's because they have a fear of being possessed. So that's another side of it, where
Yeah,
people
well,
are generally afraid to go anywhere because they're afraid of. I see that a lot with the Mexican culture. Actually, they
yes.
won't mess with anything paranormal, and they think that if they do, they'll be possessed. Is there any truth in that?
Well, yeah, I mean, every culture expresses their faith differently. And we see a lot of Latin American and Spanish countries, well, Spanish cultures.
Hmm.
The afterlife is revered. We have the Day of the Dead. And so that's really revered. And it's a mix of certain religions and Christianity and Catholicism that we are indoctrinated to be fearful and be respectful of these things. So, yes, I understand that. And I come across a lot of it. People who are gifted. They might be some sort of healer. They have, we call them curanderos. They will help you with your supernatural affliction, but they will not go any further than that. They will try to heal you, but they will not go and investigate. They don't want to know what it is because they
Right.
have a reverence and a deep respect for it, which we all should. Now, too, this is a hobby. People want answers and people just want to go out and hang out and they want to use their equipment and they want to see if they can get any evidence, which is really cool. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't have to be dark and scary, but you also just have to be careful with how you communicate with who you associate yourself with, and how you conduct these investigations. Above all, just have respect and common courtesy.
On the other side of that too, there's another part of it where mediums. I've had this happen to me where um, people say that mediums are demonic. Certain religions. I know the Catholic Church does not like mediumship at all. I've been told from a priest before that mediumship was very much playing with the demonic.
Yeah, generally that's what the church teaches, and I have a difference in opinion. We look out biblically throughout the Bible. Um, we have these prophets like Book of Daniel. They were visions. I think that people who have these abilities are gifted and they are a divine gift from God. But I think it's also how you use these gifts. For me, I call it the spirit of discernment. So if I'm in church and I can see these spirits, right? Just speaking, if just because I go to church and I see these spirits, I'm okay, right? I'm a holy person because I can see it because I'm in church. But if it's any context outside of the church and all of a sudden it's wrong,
Hmm.
I don't buy that narrative. I think that people who have these abilities are gifted from the Creator. They're gifted from God, but it's just how you use these gifts. And I can understand why that thought process and why that narrative is like that, because most of these encounters, especially from a lot of these priests who are with the Vatican, who are exorcists, they've had negative encounters. And the ones who are exorcists, a lot of their cases, when I compare case files, a lot of them have been in result because individuals have consorted with mediums and they are doing things that they shouldn't. So I can respect that, but I don't align with that thought process.
Got it. I do want to talk about a case that it inspired the movie The Conjuring.
Yes.
This Arnie Johnson, that whole
Hmm.
case. I'm going to read this just because viewers probably don't know the full story of what actually went on. They're just going to base it off of The Conjuring.
Yeah.
In the trial of Arnie Johnson, the Devil Made Me Do It case that was like in, I think, 1980s.
Yeah. I think 1983, maybe, I
Yeah.
believe.
So it was the defense was actually sought innocence based on a claim of demonic possession and denial of personal responsibility for the crime for Arnie Johnson. And what happened was he the uncle of the kid? That's the part where I kind of get
No,
confused.
so no, Arnie was the boyfriend of his sister, of Debbie Glatzel.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And it
so
was
Arnie
her
Johnson was
12-year-old
Debbie
son.
Glatzel's little brother, and Arnie Johnson was the boyfriend.
Got it. So the 12-year-old David Glatzel allegedly was possessed. And so he was going through numerous exorcisms through the Warrens.
Yeah.
And apparently this demonic being jumped from the kid into Arnie Johnson. And
Correct.
then Arnie Johnson in turn killed his landlord.
Correct. Yes, that's the story. And I've heard that case from Chris. Obviously, I'm also with the Warren Legacy Foundation, so I have insight to a lot of the cases that the Warrens worked on through their grandson, which is a privilege and a blessing. And even Joe Frankie. Joe Frankie is a good friend of mine, my colleague. He's my mentor. He's like my big brother. He worked with the Warrens for over 40 years, and he's been on a lot of their cases. So that Ernie Johnson case is interesting. I cannot make any opinions on this because I wasn't around when that happened, but nonetheless, it was a bad situation. We had a kid that was afflicted. We had an individual who was also afflicted and did things that they had no control doing, and I'll leave it at that.
Got it.
Ethically, I can't really speak on that because, I just can't really speak on that right now.
Understood.
Yes.
Do you think there are crime cases in which demonic activity played a part?
I think it's quite plausible. With all the mental health, with all the mental illnesses that are going out there, I do think that there is some sort of spiritual element behind it. As a person of faith, I understand that, we have spiritual eyes and we can't see things. And if you were to close your eyes for a few seconds and just imagine a spiritual world where there's constant battling going on between the good and evil, I believe that those things also influence us on a deeper level. And I do think that, yes, it is possible that there are people who are not mentally right due to some spiritual factors that commit these heinous crimes. But I also believe in science. And I think that there is some sort of accountability, because once we start blaming the supernatural for everything, then we lose all credibility and we lose accountability.
Mm-hmm.
We still have free will and we choose things. And I get it. A person's mental state can affect them. They might not be in the right mind and it can cause them to do things. But I think for me, the majority of those cases might have to do more with mental health, chemical imbalances in their brain, or some sort of a trauma that these individuals encountered. And now they are expressing and reenacting in a certain way and obviously taking people's lives. I don't think it's all supernatural. I don't.
Got it. And a good example of that too is Joseph DeFeo
Yeah.
in the Amityville house. That story is often completely blamed on demonic activity as well, but nobody takes the account that he was doing a lot of drugs at the time that the murders were committed.
Yeah, I mean, we know that drugs, gateway, alcohol, hallucinogens, they can open your mind and you can be susceptible to certain things. And so that is quite possible. I mean, that case right there, the Amityville, is just one of those cases that is just so deeply profound. I mean, everyone in the world knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate that this happened. It's really hard to give an analysis, and it's really hard to say exactly what happened. People have been there, they have experienced things. The Warrens were there and they've experienced things, and there were pictures and there's a lot of evidence to support these allegations. And I wasn't there. And it would be interesting to like be in the mind for a second, or just be there like as a remnant in history to see the facial reactions, to see the body, to see what that mindset is like, to see if there are white eyes, to see if there's a distortion in the voice. But once again, you have to be there. It's really hard. It's really hard on, and I'm not trying to be evasive in any way. The truth is, I can't really make an opinion on these cases that I haven't worked. They happened so long ago. It's really hard to tell. They can be a combination of many things. It can be mental health. It can be drugs, or it could just be free will and using the excuse of this made me do it. And we just have to be really careful and cautious. I do believe, though, that at least with the Arne Johnson case, there was a lot of support, a lot of claims and evidence to support it was. So I do think with the Arne Johnson case that certainly was the case. But as far as other cases, mixture of mental health, free will. Sometimes people are just born evil and they like to hurt people. And that doesn't have to do anything with the spiritual side. Although deeply rooted, they may need some good life and some good light inside of them. But there are some people that are just naturally born evil.
Kenneth, we're almost at the bottom of the hour already. Can you believe it?
What? That's crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
We've just been talking away. I've been asking you question after question after question.
Yeah.
Is there anything that...
Yeah, I was going to say something. I keep on laughing because your profile picture is right under me and I'm wearing black. And every time I look at my video, I see myself in a white shirt. I go, oh, that's not me.
Yeah, it does look kind of weird, doesn't it?
It's like I'm right there. It's like form fitting. So I'm trying to not laugh at that.
I keep hearing a dog. I keep looking at
Yeah,
my
it's my dog in the background. Sorry, he broke into the office. He's hanging out in his chair. He wants belly rubs. No.
So what do you have going on in your life right now? Are you writing a book? Are you working on any new projects?
So I did write a small book last year called Introduction to the Demonic. It's a small guidebook for paranormal investigators, and it has questions and answers and misconceptions. And as well, I do plan on working on some other projects, mostly doing some podcasts, traveling. But I have just come back from a 2-month hiatus. I had surgery in my stomach in December. And I'm just recovering. I lost 75% of my stomach, so I'm healing little by little. We have one of our boys. He's a cat. He's older, not doing too well. He has end-stage kidney failure, so we've been at the vet with him a long time, a lot this week, and so we're just trying to make him comfortable, praying that he gets a few more months. Yeah, and well, I'm just looking forward to other projects. I do have another show that I'm doing tomorrow. I'm doing a podcast at 1. Well, actually, doing a TikTok live with other paranormal teams from Spain. And then I have a radio show that I'm doing at 5 p.m. from Mexico. It's a continuation of a podcast from last week. This week I've got, so I've been pretty busy. But I've got a couple of things in the making. I just normally don't publicize a lot of what I do. I'm not that type of individual. I don't really feel the need to share what I do. If it's an event that I'm going to be doing, I'll share it, like a podcast, I'll share it. But most of what I do, I just try to keep hush hush.
So how do you stay grounded and maintain your mental and spiritual well-being while delving into the dark side like this?
Well, my faith. My faith is the most important thing. My faith, my wife, my family, my animals. Taking time for myself, disconnecting, grounding myself, playing sports, golf, hiking, rowing, rock climbing, archery, and just knowing when to be still and learning how to prioritize my life and not taking on so much. There's a fad where everybody just likes to overwork themselves and they want to take everything. They want to take every single case. They want to do everything. They don't prioritize their health and their well-being. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your clients. Plain and simple. There's no ifs and buts. If you're not healthy, then you can't. Even to the point where, like, recently my wife was like, I want to go back, and she's like, you still got some time to heal. January rolled around, and I started rolling in and back slowly, and so this week has been a whirlwind, and I've had literally 6-7 appointments dealing with clients, pastoral counseling, chaplaincy, deliverance calls. It just kind of comes up out of nowhere. And there are moments where it's quiet. I'm like, Lord, thank you. I get to study. I get to read. I just get to look out my window and enjoy the view. And there's just times when nothing is happening, and that's okay. But once those calls start rolling in, all right, you're ready. Yes, you know what? And I keep on saying because I get nervous because of my traumatic brain injury. But I do have something. Yes, I will be teaching at the University of Magicus with Patty Negri. starting Sunday. I'm going to be one of the teachers there. And so the first class that I will be teaching is the life of Father Gabriele Amorth, who was the Vatican's leading exorcist for over 40 years. And then the second class that will lead into it was actually supposed to be the Arnie Johnson case. Talk about that case a little bit and talk about how, demonic possession presents itself in different cultures and different beliefs. And so this school it encompasses all different belief systems. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to go in there and I'm going to be unbiased. I want to be able to help people understand this phenomena from a clerical perspective, but also give them the tools to help them understand and be well prepared, no matter what belief you are. So that way you're well guarded, you're well grounded, and you understand these signs beforehand. So that way you can contact somebody who knows how to deal with these things. So that is my goal overall with teaching these courses and these classes. And also too, teach about the paranormal, the scientific approach behind it, how it's a hobby and how it's become so mainstream and how it can be enjoyable, but at the same time with the risks it has.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on this show. Thank you so much for being on again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I can't wait to come back on.
Oh, you're definitely going to come back on for sure.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about Father Amorth, but I just didn't get to it. It's in my notes, though. I wanted to talk
So
about
Father Amorth was one of the Vatican's leading exorcists. I believe he was born in 1920 or 1902 in Modena, Italy. He was a soldier for the resistance in France, and he was he studied law, a politician, and then I think at the age of 30 he finally became a priest. But he didn't become an exorcist until his 60s, and he recently passed away in 2016.
Yeah.
He also established the International School of Exorcists, the International Order of Exorcists. Well, International School of Exorcists.
He had a lot of controversy with the church.
Yeah. His controversy was with who doesn't, right? So the controversy is his gripe was more them not so much giving him the support that he needed. He was out there in the field and in the trenches, and he knew what needed to be done, and he knew what resources should have been had. And so he kind of always just did things his own way, unorthodox. He would stick out his tongue at the devil during an exorcism. He actually would watch scary movies. His favorite movie was actually The Exorcist. He loved it. And so, I mean, he left a lasting impact in this world of exorcism. And there's a lot of great priests that follow his footsteps. I for one, just love what he stood for. He selflessly dedicated his life to helping other people. And I would love to be half the man he is. And I still have a long way to go. I'm still new within my ministry. I grew up in church, was raised in ministry my whole life, but this clerical part, this aspect, this part of my life, I'm still fairly new. I'm only 3.5, 4 years into my clerical ministry as an ordained priest with the old Catholic Church. And so I still have learning to do. I still have experience that I need to get under my belt. And so I'm looking forward to that journey. I don't claim to know all the answers. I'm definitely not an expert, but I do know people and I do know how to help them. And I do have a sincerity and a passion to want to be able to help you achieve your success in life, to fulfill what you're meant to do. And that's what I'm here for.
Well, Kenneth, thank you so much. And I'm definitely going to have you back.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Gateway broadcast from United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM New Orleans. You can follow me, C.L. Thomas, by visiting www.clthomas.org. Until next time.